Welcome. I'm Karen Lawrence, president of the Huntington. Carol Christ has championed the importance of accessible higher education in the liberal arts and sciences, women's issues and diversity, as well as fostering campus community. She's led crucial capital projects, literally building foundations for future generations of faculty and students. Beyond what you see on the page, I've had the personal pleasure of a friendship with Carol Christ for over 35 years. We first met in a hotel room at a Modern Language Association meeting. The chair of the Department of English at the University of Virginia, a woman named Pat Spax, got the idea to invite all the women chairs of university English departments to get together at MLA. All 6 of us assembled in her very small hotel room. I can't remember the city. And that's how our friendship began. Please now join me in welcoming Carol Christ to the stage. I thought I would start by asking you about something that I think many people know about, the University of Chicago principles on free speech, which I think were voted by the faculty of Chicago in 2014. So it's about free speech and individuals being able to have free speech, but it's also a position of institutional neutrality. First, what is that principle of institutional neutrality, and whether you think it's either desirable or possible in this climate?
It's really interesting. I don't think there's a yes or no answer to your question. I think for the most part, institutional neutrality is a good position for the leaders of universities to take. I don't think that someone in my position should be opining about every situation in the United States or internationally that occurs. The reasoning behind it, I think, is really interesting, that you don't want the leader of an institution to appear to be taking sides with one part of his or her community and not the other. Making a statement about your opinion inevitably excludes some people, makes them feel less welcome, makes them feel like their views have less value in the eyes of the institution. However, and this is where I depart from the Chicago principles, I think there are times when something happens that so strikes to the heart of the country. I think of the murders of George Floyd, for example, where not to speak out seems to me to suggest a lack of a moral compass. I would also make an exception for issues that are immediately relevant to higher education. Sometimes I speak in my own voice, and I try to be very clear that it is my own voice. So when the Supreme Court struck down Roe versus Wade, I wrote a letter to the campus about what Roe versus Wade had meant for me in my career as a woman, and how I felt at this moment. But I tried to make it very clear that I was speaking for myself and from my own experience.
To go back to the discussion about the principles of free speech and its defense, how do you balance the tension between that and student safety?
One of the things that is so deeply painful and concerning about the current situation is that students on each side feel that the conflict is existential for them, that the other side is denying them something essential to their identity. So I think that's the question more than physical safety. I think it's more a kind of emotional safety. One of the things our country has lost, and I feel so sad about this, is the capacity to have respectful disagreement with people whose views are very different from your own. You think are terribly, terribly mistaken, wrong. But you can have civil conversation, even when you deeply disagree. What you have to think about is the impact your words are going to have on your community. So I often say to students, just because you have the right to say something doesn't mean it's right to say.
As a scholar of Victorian literature, I think specializing in poetry, which you were delighted to see today. But, what does studying George Eliot's Middlemarch or Great Expectations or a Browning poem, how is that continuous with the way that you see your career, and what has it given you?
Yeah, that's a question I'm often asked, as I'm sure you're often asked. And to me, the Victorian novel, they're these big baggy monsters, and what they're about fundamentally are the relationship of multiple individuals to society. And that's the work that we do. You learn empathy from literature. You learn a sensitivity to language. So I actually think English literature is a great preparation for leadership.
Earlier, our wonderful library curators showed Carol some treasures in our library, Victorian poetry, Tennyson, Rossetti, Browning.
Yes. It was wonderful, as well as some forgeries of those poets. I didn't know it was worth forging those poets, but it is.
That's true. I left out we do have forgeries, but we label them, just so you know. Just in case you're coming to do research, they're clearly identified. So now, questions from the audience. With private college tuition now approaching $100,000 all in, and gainful employment available only in tech and data-driven jobs, can students really afford to explore the arts and humanities? And this comes from a Smith College graduate from '93.
I think students are really depriving themselves of an incredibly important part of their education if they don't explore the arts and humanities. There's a wonderful essay written by a chemist named Thomas Cech, which is about liberal arts education. And he does a study of scientific leaders and finds that many of them went to liberal arts colleges. He believes that studying multiple disciplines makes you a better scientist because you're used to changing your frame of reference. History, things about the social sciences, things about the arts, things about the humanities, they're going to help them understand the world in which we live and the places their careers are going to take them. I think they can't afford not to study the arts and humanities in terms of how well their educations are going to serve them through many changes of occupation and the many turns that life takes.
What are some of the most joyful moments of your time as Berkeley's chancellor?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. What I love is just meeting the students, meeting the alums, meeting the faculty, people I never would have met. So it's really the people that are the joyous parts of my job, as well as some of the most irritating.
What's something you used to firmly believe about which you've since changed your mind?
Oh, wow. I think it actually has to do with free speech. I used to think free speech was an absolute, and it was an absolute because in the marketplace of ideas, the truth would always win out. I no longer believe in the marketplace of ideas, and I no longer believe the truth will win out. I think we all live in such media silos that there is no such thing anymore as the marketplace of ideas. I still think free speech is really important, but I no longer think the reason I thought it was important is true.
Carol, Christ, thank you so much.
Thank you.
For this.
Thank you.